Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Kartikay Mehrotra. I'm a cybersecurity reporter here at Bloomberg News. I'm presently based in the basement of my duplex apartment in Oakland, California. I spend a lot of time here asking questions about election security, but in this new pandemic reality, it's been all hands on deck on the cyber team here at Bloomberg. So we've been writing about ransomware attacks, especially those linked to COVID themes, misinformation, disinformation, especially related to COVID and the elections, work from home vulnerabilities. And of course, this week's been swept up in trying to understand how Twitter was hacked. I have the pleasure of remotely sitting down with Tami Erwin today. Tami is the Executive Vice President and Group CEO of Verizon Business. If you don't know, Verizon Business is a unit of Verizon Communications. It works with small businesses, corporate and public sector clients around the world. As a standalone, Verizon Business would be worth $30 billion plus dollars, has more than 25,000 employees around the world. Tami specializes in bringing conglomerates, government agencies together, governments into the Verizon fold, which is quite interesting these days as more and more entities are attempting to pivot to 5G while dealing with the economic reality of operating in a pandemic. I'm sure she's collecting some really interesting war stories these days. Um, so the other day, my wife thought it'd be really cute if she got our 2.5-year-old daughter to ask me what I do downstairs all day. And I thought, okay, I deserve this. She works 100 times harder than me raising our daughter who hasn't been daycare since March. So sure, ask me to explain cybersecurity to a toddler. I deserve that. But that got me thinking, is this how CISOs at non-tech companies feel when trying to lobby for new programs and bigger budgets? And I think that was definitely the case pre-COVID. Security was often left on the cutting room floor when annual budgets were prioritized. But I wonder if that's changing now. Amid the pandemic, with everyone going home one day and then staying home for 5 months, has this finally given cyber the platform it's needed to protect our institutions from bad guys? So Tami, welcome. Really keen for your thoughts on this subject. And I wonder if you can just start by explaining if work from home has become the cyber threat we all feared it would be back in March. Is there evidence of that?
Yeah, so Kartikay, thank you very much, and thank you for covering this really important topic. And I love to see the world through the eyes of a 2-year-old. I thought everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten, and it turns out now these kids know it at 2. But listen, I think the conversation around security and whether we're seeing an increase in security incidences as people have moved to work from home, does it really capture the attention of business owners, small business, mid-sized, global enterprise, public sector? And I think the answer is yes. My sense in talking to customers around the world over the last couple of years is increasingly they've been concerned about it. Now they recognize that there's a new risk relevant to the fact that information that used to be somewhat contained within offices has now been dispersed into people's homes, millions of homes around the world, and the access to credentials, the access to information. The bad guys are busier than they've ever been before, and I think therefore what we're seeing is businesses are more concerned than ever because they feel like they have less control.
Who's most vulnerable now in 2020? Is it private companies, public agencies, a mix of both? Who's the most exposed in this work from home reality?
Yeah, I'd like to say that it's a little bit of both, and I'm not sure I could say one more than the other. I think small businesses have less information and fewer tools, which I do believe makes them a bigger target. And they don't have the experience to draw from. They don't have the team to draw from as they begin to assess the risk and then imagine how they work through it. I think we're seeing both private and public under attack. Certainly, as we see, and you're covering elections, you see what's happening there. You're covering what's happening in social media. You're seeing it there. You know, we do a report every year called the DBIR report. It's a great report. It's in its 13th year of production. This year, we talked to and assessed 32,000 security incidences. And what we found is the single biggest challenge that people have is the credential capability. And when we see people going in and managing security risk, it's 70% of it is for the purpose of course, financial gain. And so I think right now, public, private, and in particular SMB are under attack because of the lack of tools and capabilities.
So around February and March, we started hearing a lot about phishing campaigns that were COVID themed, right? Leveraging the fear of the coronavirus to scare people into taking the bait on certain attacks. But there were a number of reports that came out afterwards that said that there aren't necessarily actual attacks that are resulting in these phishing campaigns. And one reason is perhaps that attackers like to wait a really long time, maybe 80 to 90 days before actually executing. And so we're entering that 90, 100 days now after everyone went back home. Are we now in that time where we're going to start to see these exploits, and what can companies do having that knowledge to protect themselves?
Yeah, I think the question of when is always a big question. I don't know that it'll be now more than 30 days ago, but what I do know is that the bad guys have not rested and they have more access to information than they've ever had before. And what we've encouraged our customers as we've worked with them, particularly as they've moved customers from home, you look at what happened in the first 30 days of COVID, whether it was in the Asia markets or in Europe or here in the US, we worked very closely with our customers to help them move home, their employees home, their businesses home, to build out a business continuity disaster recovery. And for us, a big part of that was making sure they had secure VPN capability. I know with our employees, I have 25,000 employees. We moved them home in 1 week. 99% of them are working from home, making sure we're clear about the expectation around credentials so that people are doing the right thing every single day with credentials and capability, access to information. And then more and more of our customers are asking us to do monitoring so that we can be proactive at assessing where do we believe that, based on incident reports that we're seeing and have access to from a network standpoint, that we can raise the flag early. Because I think what businesses all acknowledge today, it's not if I'm going to have a security problem, it's when. And when I have it, what actions will I take? And so I think we're seeing that particularly in large public agencies, I think in healthcare, in banking in particular, these guys are all over it. And then I think in small businesses are waking up to, how do I make sure that I'm monitoring today, that I'm putting some of the tools in place that allow me to be more effective at keeping the bad guys out, but recognizing when they get in, I have a partner to turn to.
Yeah. It sounds like you're saying that the maturity of a typical American corporation in 2020 has really evolved because of the pandemic. So
Yeah.
is there now broad acceptance that cyber attacks sometimes can't be avoided? And more importantly, especially from a journalist perspective, do victims understand that it's okay to talk about being attacked?
Yeah, my sense is that there's absolutely growing acceptance that it will happen. It doesn't mean that anyone is excused for letting it happen, and I think those are two very distinct things. So I know we work very closely with the CIO community to make sure that they've got a really well thought out plan to prevent. But then, if it happens, how do you remedy and how do you really recover? So businesses are building both of those plans right now, and I think that's a distinct difference. When you look at what's happening as a result of COVID, I think our entire worlds are changing as we think about, how will we operate today? How will we operate in the future? What are the things that we love about what we've learned from COVID? Because we've learned a lot. As I've had a chance in my engagement with customers, every customer was moving towards a digital engagement strategy, a digital transformation journey, but they were a little hesitant to do so. COVID created the moment that said you have to go digital. And when you acknowledge that, when you adopt that, then you have no choice but to build security in as one of the critical platforms to enable and protect your assets.
This year, obviously, it didn't turn out as anyone planned.
Right.
How has COVID shaped companies' security budgets? I have one source who's trying to convince me that the push to work from home has actually fast-tracked certain cyber programs. That companies are taking sometimes days to accomplish what they thought they would roll out over the course of a year or years. Is that the case?
Absolutely. I had a client the other day say to me, my transformation plans were slingshotted out of my planning into execution because I had no choice. And so I think COVID has created the moment for people to have an urgency around the digital transformation. I look at small businesses. 50% of small businesses, when their front door closed, their business closed because they didn't have a digital portal to be able to open a digital door to their customers. We've worked with customers, small and medium, all the way through global enterprise and public, state and federal customers, to say, now that you have to accelerate that, how do you do that with an acknowledgement that the single most important thing you can do is protect those assets, those digital assets, through security management by building a very secure platform. One of the things that I'm super proud of at Verizon was we recently acquired a new platform called BlueJeans. It's a video and collaboration platform. We acquired it in the second quarter, late second quarter. One of the attractions for us to that was security. Why? Because our customers are demanding that our platforms, our applications and solutions be absolutely as secure as the network that their businesses run on. So I would say your friend is dead on. It is slingshotting and really accelerating the capability of transformation, and security is at the forefront of what people are doing.
That's really interesting. You mentioned small businesses. Oftentimes, they don't have the luxury of having dedicated security staff. They might have one or two IT personnel max, but they often rely on MSPs, MSSPs to protect themselves. How are those companies and the MSPs themselves pivoting in the work from home reality? Has it changed for them when they're at home? And do you have any insight into how they protect themselves?
Yeah, one of the things I'm super proud of at Verizon is that early on with COVID, we identified that our role during the crisis was, number one, to protect our employees and keep them safe, but number two, that the core connectivity that we deliver to customers is essential and paramount to maintaining their businesses. And so we've worked closely with customers, in particular small businesses, to say, how do we be their partner as we go through this COVID impact? COVID directly impacted small business. It directly impacted particular verticals like hospitality and retail. And so with small businesses in particular, we've done a number of things to really provide them with the tools. To your point, they haven't had those tools to be able to create a digital platform to open their physical front door with a digital front door. We've created a series of webinars. We've done 20 webinars so far that give customers insights into things like security, into advanced comms capability, into website design, into information management, and launched a number of those kinds of programs to really make sure that we could assist small businesses in redesigning and re-engineering their business to be a digital business as opposed to simply a physical storefront business. And that's been really important to us. We recognize that we have not only a portfolio of products, but we have access to great information and great experts in these spaces, and opening that up to small businesses so that we can partner with them as they go through the recovery efforts.
Endure when they have to deal with the security crisis? What goes through their mind when they're having to decide between paying their bills and keeping their lights on, or perhaps paying to recover from a ransomware attack, whether that be rebuilding their network or actually paying the attacker? What does that look like for them, and how do they make that decision?
Yeah, listen, businesses, small and large, are having to make very difficult decisions around what do they fund. Do they fund payroll? Do they fund cyber? Do they fund just the ability to keep the lights on in their businesses? And what we hope is, and what we expect is, that as customers are faced with some of those challenges, that they reach out to us, because we think we can help them to begin to decipher some of the security risks in their business. We can point them towards experts that can give them consult and information on some of those security risks. We've also found ourselves in the small business space in particular saying, listen, we will participate in the Keep America Connected program, which gave people access to more data than they had previously had, gave them new payment terms, so it gave them the ability to have fewer choices about where they had to put their money. And then our Pay It Forward Live program has been terrific in that it has given us a chance to give grants to small businesses, so it gives them another access to financial liquidity that has allowed them to have simpler choices and more options in which to make those choices.
But Can you offer some insight into security and healthcare? If there's one industry that's feeling the strain of this global pandemic more than others, it's got to be our hospitals, our private clinics, research firms, pharmacos, biotech. Um, are they being targeted more than in years past? And how are they making cyber budgetary decisions? It's got to be more difficult than other industries.
Yeah, I think healthcare is a really interesting space. I had a conversation this week with the CEO of a very large healthcare business, and it was really interesting as you think about how do they care for patient safety, it's information of patient information, information of provider information, and information of insurance providers. So they're caring for a ton of data. I think what I heard and what I continue to hear is that becomes critical and absolutely foundational to how they build their business plans for digital transformation. I think the challenge becomes is you have all these remote clinics and people that are running small businesses. How do they filter that in? So the single most important thing they can do is make sure that they're protecting the credentials of the information they have access to. So whether it's the patient, whether it's the physician, whether it's the insurer, to make sure that that information is protected and cared for. That people are not sharing credentials within offices, but rather maintaining those credentials and treating them with the respect they really deserve. It's interesting. I went in yesterday to have my eyes checked into a physician's office. It was a bit of a weird experience with a mask on, but what I saw is really good handling of information, very secure, less of the multitasking. So I think that healthcare organizations are very targeted and they are on high alert right now. The other thing I'm finding really interesting around healthcare is the days of going to the doctor and sitting in the doctor's office with this when you're sick, I think are just gone. I think about your 2.5-year-old daughter. You'll never take her to the doctor when she's sick because I think you'll be able to do all of that via virtual consult. I think we will build personal profiles with our healthcare information, which makes security more important than ever. I think we will have platforms like BlueJeans that enable us to have video and collaboration with physicians. And I think certainly for well care, that will always be the case. So it's an exciting time. And yet I think that the world has woken up to say, if we're going to do all these things that we imagine in a post-COVID world, we have to put security front and center. So I take a lot of encouragement in the fact that I think that we're working hard to make it harder and harder for the bad guys to penetrate with some basic hygiene and then some good system capability.
It sounds like you're saying that the changes that are being made now on a security apparatus are here to stay. These aren't changes that are
Yes.
being made just to survive 2020 and then go back to normal next year. These are changes that are going to change the way we operate and protect our networks from this point forward.
Absolutely. I think these are all really positive outcomes from COVID that will be much more deliberate, much more forceful, much more urgent about how we manage security. And I think that's one of the really good things that will come out of COVID. Now, I also recognize that while we're working hard to be thoughtful about security and urgent about it, the bad guys are looking for new ways to penetrate, and they want to continue to find access to the information. But I think it's been a wake-up call, and I think it's been positive for the overall industry around digital transformation, around protecting information, and around making sure that we build processes and protocols that protect that information. So it's one of maybe a few things that have come positive out of COVID.
Tami, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. This has been most informative, and thank you very much for the work that you're doing in this space.
Yeah, Kartikay, thank you so much for covering it, for talking about it. The more we talk about it, the better we'll get at it. I wish you and your family good health as we continue to battle COVID. Be well.